All right, so today I want to talk about 4 simple hacks that are going to save you time. As a teacher, we only have so much time, right? And we want to make sure that we're utilizing our time effectively. So I'm going to share with you 4 strategies that I've utilized when I was in the classroom and that we utilize with our teachers inside of our EB Teachers Club, our EB Writing Program, and it works. So I'm going to share these 4 tips with you. Hopefully they serve you in some capacity as well. And for more videos like this one, before we dive in, make sure that you hit subscribe where you're watching this video. And if you find that this video is helpful, we would love it if you would please share with another middle school ELA teacher who could benefit from these same strategies as well. All right, let's start with number 1, is you want to have a distraction-free zone. And as seemingly obvious and simple as it sounds, it really makes a difference when we sit down to do any sort of work that it might be, lesson planning, grading, whatever it is. You've got to create an insulated space for yourself where nobody can bother you so you can really get into the deep work that you're doing, right? So if we're talking about batch planning or you're spending, an hour or so, a chunk of time grading, you want to make sure that not only are you free from distractions from kids or from colleagues or from your partner or from your dogs. My dogs drive me nuts, right? We also want to make sure that we have a clutter-free distraction place as much as possible. Because what that does is it gives our brains the space to actually stay focused on the work. We have a lot of stuff around us on our desk or whatever it might be. It's easy to get distracted subconsciously by all the other kind of noise around us in our world. So as much as you can, create like an actual buffer zone from people and things in the outside world, but also think about like where you are working, how that workspace is serving your productivity as well. So if your teacher desk is a disaster, perhaps that's something that you can get started with decluttering and working on in that capacity. At the end of every day before I left, I always made sure that my desk was free of clutter. I had nothing on it, no piles of stuff that needed to get done, things along those lines. It was completely clear. What I did have was a desk at the front of, like a table at the front of my classroom where I would have all of my copies or things to pass back and things like that. So I put those away from me. They weren't in my space where I was actually planning. So this is something that's really important, is having a distraction-free zone so you can really stay focused on the task at hand and you're not wasting any subconscious mind space thinking about all of the other things that you've got going on around you. So that's number 1, distraction-free zone, super important. All right, number 2, and I swear to you this one works, so if you haven't done it before, it's definitely worth a try, is to set a timer. As crazy and silly as that sounds, when we set a timer, we just work differently. We really do. That happens to me when I go to the gym. If I have a timer, I work differently. That happens to me if I'm writing a blog post or I'm writing something for EB or whatever it might be, I'm working on a project. If I set a timer, I operate differently. And this ties into this whole concept of Parkinson's law, that whatever task we have at hand is going to take us as long as we give ourselves. So if we give ourselves 45 minutes to grade this stack of papers, or we give ourselves 45 minutes to get this work done for the thing that we're batch planning for, maybe you're batch planning for 2 weeks or 2 months or something like that, you want to give yourself a set period of time, and by the end of that clock, you are going to be finished. Another thing that you can do with this as well is utilizing the Pomodoro method. And this is actually something that I used when we were writing our book. And the Pomodoro method basically teaches you to set a timer for 25 minutes, put on the soundtrack of some, classical music. I put on the Gladiator soundtrack. That's the thing I listen to when I want to be productive. So side note that you can write that down. But for 25 minutes, I'm going to be completely undistracted, completely focused time in the work. And then at the end of those 25 minutes, I'm going to take a 5 or 10 minute break, depending on what works for your brain. I took a 10-minute break. And then I'd come back and do it again. So when I'm planning for like the period of time that I want to actually complete this specific thing within, I was taking into account the break time as well. So if I'm doing 25 minutes and a 10-minute break, that's 35 minutes for each chunk of work time. So I might set aside 70 minutes total to complete 2 sessions of a Pomodoro method, where I'm grading essays or I'm lesson planning or whatever it might be. So this is huge, right? We are able to complete whatever we set out to within the time frame that we give ourselves. This makes a huge, huge, huge difference in your productivity and your efficiency. So definitely give that a try. Okay, number 3, I'm gonna give a shameless plug to our EB Teachers Club right now, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But you wanna have a go-to place for your resources or for your lessons. And before I talk about this in terms of ELA, I wanna give you an analogy to think about. I want you to think about a store that perhaps you've never been into, right? Maybe you've never been into an Old Navy before, okay, just as an example. And if you've never been to Old Navy before, you're gonna be kind of brand new, looking around, trying to find where things are, right? Trying to figure out, do I want this out, like does this outfit mesh with my style, right? So it might not necessarily be aligned with your particular style, your values, the way that you want to dress, whatever it might be. You're gonna have a hard time finding what it is that you want to wear that lines up with you, right? And also just navigating the store. I don't know about you, but when I go to a grocery store that I've never been in before, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't find what I need, right? I waste my time looking for things, okay? And the same thing goes with lesson plans, right? If we have a go-to store, let's say that I love shopping at, I don't know, let's just say Target. I know where everything is in Target, okay? I go into Target, I get what I need, I know the clothes that fit my style, I'm in, I'm out, I'm happy, it's aligned, right? I'm good. And it's not a ton of wasted time. And it also meets my personal needs because I know my style and Target lines up with my style, right? Same thing goes for our lessons in the classroom. So if we have a go-to place that we're familiar with in terms of the way that the lessons are structured, the way that the units are structured and things like that, I know how it's going to fall into my classroom. I know how it's going to work for my students. I understand the way that these particular curriculum writers are providing the background information for me, the way that they structure them. For us, we structure them in our EB lesson planning framework, which is an into, a through, and a beyond lesson, right? So because we have a lot of teachers who mostly utilize our resources, they know if they need something for X, they know where to come. They're familiar with it. They're familiar with the framework. They're familiar with the way in which we provide the lessons and all of that stuff. So they're not wasting time searching in a different place that they're unfamiliar with, right? And what's really cool about this of having a go-to place for lessons, if you're utilizing the same framework, again, this is what we find with our teachers, is that because they're familiar with what it is that we're doing, students are able to get into the work a lot faster. Right? They're familiar with the style, right? They're familiar with the design. They're familiar with the framework through which we teach everything. And so you know what you're gonna get, right? And the language is common, right? So the language that we teach within our EBW approach, within our EB writing program, we have very specific jargon for our EBW approach. That jargon ties over into our other lessons for our novel units and things like that. So you wanna find whatever that is. Of course, we'd love it to be ours, but if it's not, you wanna find a go-to place that you go to time and time again for your lessons so you're not wasting any of your precious time, right? That really does save you a lot of time. So use that, store analogy. I was in Ohio visiting my husband's family and I went to a Kroger for the first time. I couldn't find bread. I couldn't find anything that I needed. It was such a waste of my time because I was unfamiliar with it, right? So it really does make a difference. So definitely something to think about in how you're utilizing and finding the resources that you use in your classroom. Okay, so last but not least, and you know what, we all just got to get on the bandwagon, is to make friends with ChatGPT. So we're going to make use of ChatGPT and whatever OpenAI or AI system that you can. And what's great is that ChatGPT can just be like a brainstorming partner for us, right? So we actually utilize ChatGPT. We hosted a workshop on test prep with our EB teachers this past winter. And we were utilizing ChatGPT to help us come up with multiple choice questions around a specific topic or a specific text. We were asking ChatGPT to write an essay format or to write an essay for us following this specific framework using these specific quotes, right? So we can use ChatGPT in so many different ways. I can't tell you how many Facebook groups I've been into for teacher Facebook groups, and they're like, hey, does anybody have an essential question for blah, blah, blah? Or hey, does anybody have vocabulary words for X novel? And I'm like, dude, just ask ChatGPT. It's gonna tell you all of that information. So as much as this is a challenge, obviously, right, with our students, there is a way to harness the power of ChatGPT to really support us in our classroom in a multitude of ways. So anything that you're like, I really gotta find, and you go to search online, type it into ChatGPT first and see what it comes up with for you. And then of course you can make tweaks and things like that along the way. So there you have it, 4 strategies to save you time in your middle school ELA classroom.